Welcome to Health Facts with Normani Rick. I am your host, Normani Rick. I like to start each episode with a little known health fact. Did you know that stress can cause sudden death? Well, yes, that's a fact, especially in certain ethnic groups. That is why it is so important that we take care of our mental health and emotional health. I have the honor and privilege of hosting Miss Nzinga Garvey on the show today. Miss Garvey is the granddaughter of the infamous Marcus Garvey, who was an international hero for civil rights and advocacy. Just yesterday, President Joe Biden historically pardoned Mr. Garvey for an unjust conviction over 100 years ago. This is monumental and a huge win for your family, the Jamaican people, and the United States in general, just in time for the Martin Luther King holiday. Welcome to 2025.
Absolutely. What an astounding way for all of us within the African diaspora to truly be able to ring in 2025. You hit the nail on the head. Obviously, today being a federal holiday where we get to celebrate the amazing legacy of Martin Luther King. And then just yesterday, President Joe Biden granted a posthumous pardon for my grandfather, Marcus Messiah Garvey. Honestly, I have to say that this was a very, very, very long journey, basically a two-generational journey. But from a legislative standpoint, it actually began in 1987. So to think that from 1987 to now, our family has been so steadfast in terms of our commitment to really be able to speak to the broader issue. And for us, the broader issue is at no time should there ever be the criminalization of those who seek to fight for freedom, justice, and liberty. And for us, and I'll speak mostly for myself, this action speaks to today's freedom fighters and tomorrow's freedom fighters, that we can come together and recognize that our pursuit of what is in our self-interest can never be criminalized, and nor should any government around the world, whether it's the United States or any other country, have an overreach of power in such a way as to imprison those that are seeking freedom, justice, and liberty.
What a statement. That's amazing. Thank you so much for being able to come forward and share your story and share your world with us today. So we're very appreciative and very grateful. So I just want to ask you about yourself, how you came to be who you are, and who had the biggest influence on you.
These are all amazing questions, and I have to say, it is such an honor to be able to come from a family with such a rich legacy. Garvey is a name that really resounds around the world. In terms of the amazing work of both my grandfather as well as my grandmother, the work that was done through the UNIA and, of course, their prominent newspaper, The Negro World, really allowed a membership of over 6 million people of color around the world. At no time to date has there ever been a mass movement speaking to social justice that didn't speak about having 6 million followers, didn't speak to having 6 million shares, didn't speak to having 6 million reposts. We are talking about paid membership into an organization which speaks to the prominence and the power of the message and the movement behind the man. So to come from such a rich legacy that was really anchored in terms of the work of my grandmother, Amy Jakes Garvey, as well as my grandfather, Marcus Messiah Garvey, the legacy was then carried in terms of my own father, Dr. Julius Garvey, who is a retired cardiothoracic surgeon. So I find that the work that I now do in behavioral health care has so been impacted by not only the social justice movement of serving marginalized and underserved communities from my grandfather, but then looking at the profound work in healthcare from my father in terms of also addressing the needs of underserved and marginalized communities around the African diaspora it feels very natural for me to have anchored in this particular career at this particular moment in time.
That's awesome. So I read that you are a nutritional psychiatrist. A lot of people don't know what that is. So can you kind of explain what that means?
So actually, I follow food is medicine philosophy, and I really lean into nutritional psychiatry. I am actually getting a second master's at USC in health administration, and I already have a MBA from Columbia University. And so my interests are in nutritional psychiatry, as I believe that that is the next forefront, the next areas for innovation to start to address a whole series of chronic illnesses that fall under behavioral health care. Oftentimes, we look at chronic illness, and for so long, it has been prescribed to genetics, and not enough has been prescribed to lifestyle, environment, and actual choice. And that's where I find nutritional psychiatry and the opportunity to use food choices as a means of impacting our mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being absolutely profound. So just as a clarification, I am interested in the domain of nutritional psychiatry, but I sit and anchor as a business architect in healthcare administration.
Awesome. I wanted to ask the question, how do you overcome lifestyle stressors? So if you're just stressed all the time, how can you use food as medicine? And what else can you use to decrease your stress so that you won't have a chronic event?
Okay. Literally, when you asked me this question, I got chills because now you're delving into behind the curtain and what do I do personally? So I have to say, first and foremost, I want to thank my father on two particular fronts. First, from the standpoint of what kind of foods were introduced into our home at all times. And there was always a plethora of vegetables and fruits and even well-sourced meats, but not an emphasis on carbohydrates, just to be clear, and certainly not an emphasis in terms of ultra-processed foods. And then another thing that my father did that I will be forever grateful was that at my age of 13, and you can all imagine the transitions that we're going through during this time of adolescence and puberty, my father introduced to me Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. And I remember our first excursion to a Buddhist monastery in Woodstock, New York. And it was a silent retreat. And at that point, I had the opportunity to have the introduction of meditation and mindfulness techniques from Buddhism. And that has carried through my entire life. Often what I subscribe to a Garvey philosophy is one that is really anchored in mindset. If you read a lot of the philosophies and teachings of my grandfather, and then certainly echoed in terms of the professional and personal philosophies of my dad, so much of our success leans into introspection. How do we sit with ourselves and manage our own emotions, manage our own thoughts, and then ultimately manage our own actions? And you begin to see this very profound domino effect that if I can start to control my thoughts, which then control my emotions, that ultimately controls my behaviors. And the most wonderful tool out of a mindfulness and meditation practice is the opportunity to pause when agitated. If I can give a listener any takeaway, I beg of you, how to 5, and if need be, how to 10. Take that first voluminous breath that fills your lungs through the nostrils. Hold that for 5 seconds, then exhale. What you're starting to do is calm the nervous central system. You're reducing the release of cortisol, and you're really recalibrating your opportunity to respond rather than react. And so that is something that sits in my toolkit that I would gladly give away to everyone, because in that pause where we lean into breath work as well as other thought reducing activities, we are then able to have a better composure in terms of how we respond to life. And that really speaks to our ability to de-stress, because the ravages of the cortisol release is what starts to speak to where inflammation and chronic illness really starts to live.
Thank you so much for that advice, Nzinga. We all need to hear that. Also, I know that you are a producer. Do you have any upcoming projects?
Thank you so much for saying that. So again, I really believe that we now have entered a time where we all sit as content creators. And I welcome that we all start to look at our own personal brands. And this is where, again, I'm going to go back to Buddhist teachings. I'm going to go back to mindfulness and meditation, where we move introspectively, where we start down this beautiful path of self-discovery, self-exploration, and self-awareness to begin to tap into purpose, passion, and something that sits as part of our personal story. And the moment you anchor in those three P's, you begin to find a narrative, a ability to storytell that then makes you want to get excited about using technology, being innovative, and creating content, whether that sits as audio content, audio video content, or even the beautiful written word. We all sit with this power to be able to express ourselves, to be able to sit in an excitement of wanting to take our gifts and give them to the world. Our family is now navigating a handful of exciting projects, a couple of documentaries that speak to our legacy, because with the posthumous pardon, this really is a renaissance and a rebirth of all things that speak of Garveyism. And so one of the exciting projects that we are working on is a project with a set of producers out of the UK that are going to take viewers on a dynamic journey of looking at the Black Star Line, which starts to speak to self-determination and economic empowerment within our communities. And again, that is something we're quite excited about.
This is a story that needs to be told. Like you said, the Renaissance and the rebirth. And like I said, welcome to 2025. This is a time to tell the story. So I'm very excited.
I love that you're saying that, because this is where I want to welcome individuals to look at every moment in time as an opportunity. Often people will cite, where did someone like Marcus Garvey come from? He was a product of the time that he was born in. And so I fundamentally believe there are no accidents when we speak about God, when we speak about the universe, when we speak about source. We were put in this moment of time, and we all need to ask ourselves that pointed question: with my unique set of talents, with my unique set of abilities in this moment of time, how am I supposed to set out as an agent of change? How am I supposed to set out as an agent of transformation? And in that excitement, we are supposed to come together as community, asking ourselves how to live the fullest, most robust, authentic versions of ourselves, rather than shrink to the challenges. And that's what I invite people to look at the Garvey legacy and to look at the man, the movement, and the message and say, born in that moment in time, how did he take his unique gifts and be able to impact an entire world? And how do we have that opportunity to impact one life or a million lives? And that's what gets me excited waking up every single day.
Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you for bringing your wisdom and knowledge to our show today. We're going to wrap it up. Do you want to leave anything for your listeners?
Absolutely. More than anything, I really want to take this opportunity to speak about health equity and health disparities. This is something that resonates very strongly with me as well as my family. As previously mentioned, my father, Dr. Julius Garvey, is a retired cardiothoracic surgeon. But as all of your listeners can imagine, we grew up in a household well aware of the impact that life choices make on our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. And I invite people to start to take back agency, start to take back power, and to look at what choices can I make on a daily basis that can impact me in a positive way. And that may mean one choice in terms of a different type of food. It may mean one choice in terms of a different physical activity. It may mean one choice in terms of a self-care opportunity. But for our own mental well-being, I invite people to do the work in terms of igniting their own curiosity and taking personal agency and what solutions can be personalized and individualized to their life's journey. We all have a story to tell, but without optimal health, no amount of riches will ever give us a rich life. And so the true richness of life really comes in good health. And when we have good health, we can do anything that the world demands of us. And so first and foremost, get curious. I stay curious. I invite others to stay curious. And most important, get curious from all of the amazing practitioners. I want to say a particular thank you to so many Black doctors in white coats. It is our Black doctors in white coats that hold the answers to where our community can move next in terms of health care, in terms of health equity, and really closing that gap in terms of the disparity. So I want to certainly honor those Black doctors in white coats that are on the forefront of leading change for all of us to have optimal lives and to seek our peak performance.
The main takeaway that I got is take back power. So I'm definitely going to take that into 2025, and I'm going to stay curious, and then we're going to make it to the finish line. Thank you so much, Nzinga.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a dynamic conversation. It energized me because any opportunity to talk about how we can empower others based on how we've empowered ourselves, because ultimately it always starts with us.